I'm delighted today to welcome to Portable Magic a most amazing writer and also my friend. So, just in case anyone's feeling a little biased, there is a little bias here. Corinne Fenton has established a reputation for writing beautiful picture books about animals and the histories that they have left us with and the legends that they've become. Her award-winning books include My Friend Tertius. Notice I have to count them off. My Friend Tertius, Bob the Railway Dog, The Dog on the Tucker Box, Queenie, One Elephant Story, and also Little Dog and the Christmas Witch, which made the Myer Christmas windows in Melbourne, which was huge. Lately, A Cat Called Trim and Scrufflenut, which were both came out last year, which is why I'm saying lately, they were released in the UK as well. Corinne's most recent book that came out just as COVID hit is To the Bridge, and we're going to find out about To the Bridge today and also about how Corinne works. Corinne Fenton, hello, how are you?
Hi Sue, I'm fine, and you?
I'm well, thank you very much. So, Corinne, what attracted you to writing? I mean, you are prolific. What was it that made you want to start writing in the first place?
Look, I suppose as a child, I wrote poetry, and when I was at school, it was an unusual thing to do, and I was really embarrassed by it. So I used to hide it under my bed. But look, I always loved books, always loved writing, but never dreamed that I could actually make a career out of it. And look, by accident, one day I saw a creative writing one day workshop advertised at the Baldwin Library. Hazel Edwards was running it, went along, and basically I didn't want to be a secretary or PA anymore. I wanted to write. So really, that's how it began.
When you were a child, what sort of things did you like to read?
Well, I've actually got my very first treasured book here. I'll just show you. It's a bit battered and
Oh,
sellotapes on it, but I suppose in a way it's quite telling. Number one, you can see the animals on the cover called the Jolly Farm Book. But inside, I don't know if we can actually see that or not,
you
but
can
what
see
it
the
says,
award, yes.
okay, so it's St Mark's Church of England Sunday School in West Preston, presented to me when I was 3 years old, equal second kindergarten. The story behind it was that if we didn't miss a kindergarten session on a Sunday for religious instruction, you would get a book as a prize. So one day my father dropped me off, it was raining, I ran ahead with enthusiasm, fell down in a puddle, totally covered in mud. He picked me up, took me home. My mother bathed me, and I absolutely insisted that I be taken back for the last 5 minutes of Sunday school to get the book. And that's the book. So it's very, very old, very, very special.
Very special. And yes, I have noted the animals, and that theme has stayed with you all the way through. So, why children's writing? Why not young adult or, say, adult writing?
Yeah, look, my heart is at the other end. My heart is in just very few words, telling the story with the economy of words. I have no real desire to write a novel. I've written, sort of short novels. For me, 3,000 words is a lot. I just feel comfortable back around the 500, 600, 700 words. And sometimes it's only 50 words, like in the Hey Baby series. That's just where I'm comfortable and happy. And I also think picture books, I really wish I would love to be able to illustrate. I really am hopeless, but when I'm writing, I see the illustrations in my head. So for a story to be half told in the words and the pictures, for me, that's what picture books are all about. And it's, yeah, why I love them.
What sort of relationship do you have with your illustrator? Because some people have nothing and other people work quite closely with their illustrator. How do you like to work?
Mm. Look, it depends. I've been fortunate enough to work with a number of illustrators, 2 or 3 times. So you do build up that relationship. And yes, I've heard those stories too, where some authors and illustrators never ever meet. And I've been very fortunate in that I've met all my illustrators and worked with them. Sorry, I'll clarify. One I haven't met, but that's Chasing Shadows, Hannah Somerville. She lives up in northern New South Wales. It just didn't happen at the time. But look, I do think it's important for me. I mean, if you know the person, you know their work, I think the book has got to be better. So I think I'm very fortunate, and I love them all. I love all my illustrators, and yeah, and I hope to have some more too.
Well, we'll talk about future projects at the moment, but let's talk about Lenny and To the Bridge. Where did that idea come from?
Okay, I just happen to have something.
Here's what you prepared.
I've noticed with a lot of interviews when it's black and white, it doesn't always show, but this one is actually quite strong. So basically what happened, so this is a newspaper clipping that appeared in the Herald Sun on March 17, 2007. Now, my friend actually sent this to me, just, a very dear friend, and on the back it says, "Hi, Corinne, sending you a copy of Lenny's story. Regards, Julie Oliveri." So Lenny was actually a distant relative of hers. She saw this newspaper article years later, photocopied it and sent it to me. And unfortunately what I did with it was put it in the pile of stories I would like to write one day. And there it sat, and I don't know for how many years. When I did pull it out, and I mentioned it to a publisher then at Black Dog Books, Mary Ann Valentine, she said to me, "Oh, Corinne, we've got to do this. You know, you've got an adventurous young boy, 1932, 9 years old, hops on his pony and rides to Sydney." He was fascinated by the Sydney Harbour Bridge, and with the permission of his father, that's what he did. And you'd have to be.
I can't get over the fact a 9-year-old child has jumped on a pony and ridden on his own. And it wasn't just, up the Hume. He had some trials and tribulations on the way, didn't he?
Absolutely. There were bushfires, and he went through the snowy mountains, so it was, fog. Certainly some challenges. But look, he was prepared. He sat down with his father, and he worked out that if he travelled 20 miles a day, that would be enough for Ginger Mick. His main concern was Ginger Mick and keeping him well, keeping him safe, and that's just what he did. And I think a lot of mothers, a lot of reviewers have been making comments and saying there's no way in the world you can imagine a 9-year-old doing that today. But I think, country kids, even today, they made pretty strong stuff. And back then, anybody who lived in the country, and particularly that family, they just got up and did things. And that's what he did. There was no fuss, no fanfare. He went up to actually see the bridge. He didn't plan to join the parade. So it wasn't until he got there that he was invited to take part in it. So a wonderful experience.
Did his legend precede him? Like, as he travelled, were people waiting for him? Did he become like a celebrity at the time?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And he didn't like any of that, because the journey, by the time he got, sort of halfway and up, certainly through the snowy mountains and into Parramatta and all that area, and he went to Canberra as well. So by the time, as he's moving along, everybody was talking about him. So it was basically word of mouth, and people started offering him to stay. And he did say, as I say in the book, he stayed at some posh hotels. So for a country kid, he probably never stayed in a hotel in his life. So that would have been an experience. So everywhere he went, people were overjoyed, but he still didn't really feel very comfortable doing the interviews. All he wanted to do was, look after Ginger Mick and see the bridge. That was his whole aim, and he certainly did that.
During the process of the writing, you got to know his sister very well.
I did.
Yeah.
So after the article, once I decided to write, I discovered that Beryl Ferrier, so she was Lenny's younger sister by 3 years. She also had a twin brother, and her memory of the events surrounding it and of her brother were just incredible. And I initially rang her and I thought, I've got to meet this woman. So I flew up to the Gold Coast and I met Beryl, and she walked to the supermarket with me and we shopped, and I just talked to her, and she really was the one who gave me the heart of the story. You know, there's a lot of stuff on the internet out there, and there's been previous books as well, not in picture book form, but published on Lenny's journey. But she was the one who, her memories were there and they were so sharp. And she was just, a beautiful lady. And, when I met her, she was 90 years old. So at times, the book really took 5 years. So there were times where I worry and think, I hope she sees it. And on that point, about a year and a half ago, Beryl was down in Melbourne, and I invited her and Andrew McLean over, and Beryl just sat surrounded by Andrew's illustrations, and that was just a very special thing. And I have photos of all of that, and they got on really well. And she said something to Andrew along the lines of, I would trust anything that you wanted to illustrate. So, that in itself was, we had permission. And I had so many telephone conversations with her about the story, about the words. And so that was a really good thing.
Yeah, quite amazing. And she also, I think, personified his courage and determination and just zest for life. Just quite remarkable.
Absolutely. And she did say to me not that long ago that she said, if you want something done, you just get on and do it. So it's not like you wait for somebody else to do it because you're too lazy to, basically bottom line is, you want it done, you go out and do it.
Amazing.
Really good attitude, and salt of the earth.
Yeah, absolutely. Something you said when you were talking about what she gave you, and I think this is what makes all your books stand apart from other picture books: heart. How important is it for you to find that heart in a story?
Everything. It's just no heart, no story. And I'm struggling like anything, particularly at the moment, with a current story, which I can't tell you about. But the finding the heart of that has been really tough. And I think, the whole time as an author, you're learning as you go along. And I actually researched this story to absolute death. And what I do is I research as far as I can go, and then I sit back and leave it. And then I wait until I'm ready and the heart is set to go. This time I went too early, and that has been a very hard lesson, but also a good thing to learn. It doesn't matter how long you write for. All of us, we need to move on and we learn as we go. And I think that's a really important lesson.
I think it too, I believe every book we write has its own problem. Like there's always something with a book that's a problem. And clearly with this new secret project, it's finding the heart. What was it with Lenny, with To the Bridge? What was the problem you encountered writing it?
Look, I suppose going right back, it was pulling back the information, because there was so much. This is this huge journey that he did, and there was so much about Lenny and the family and the way they grew up. But there was one in the beginning. So I was fortunate enough to go to Leongatha when I was still researching, and I visited Fleur's farm, which is where Lenny and his siblings all grew up. And out in their backyard, literally, is a dam. And Lenny was this maker of things. So he made golf clubs for he and his siblings. He made a little boat which they sailed in the dam. He made model aeroplanes, which all of this is why he was so fascinated with the bridge and the building of it. And I did at that point, because that was the beginning of the story, the kids in the dam in the boat. That's when Andrew started illustrating, and I sent a photo of the dam, and there was this beautiful reflection of beautiful blue sky in the trees in the dam, and I had this sense of place. These, this is where he was, and this is where they sailed this, or not sailed because it didn't have a sail, but they rowed this little boat and they fished for yabbies, which is such a wonderful country old-fashioned thing to do. And I don't know that things will be very clear. I'm just lucky enough to have, can you see that clearly or not? So these are basically, and this is some of Andrew's roughs of the dam and the boat, and the kids, and you can see Lenny with the golf clubs. Now, this doesn't appear in the book, it's not in there, but it's something I can talk about when I go to school. And on the strength of that, gorgeous Andrew got on the internet and he actually researched how to build the type of boat that Lenny built. So basically all the details are here, Lenny's tin boat. And he's put wood there and obviously the some sort of metal, probably some sort of wrought iron. But I'm thinking when I go into schools, when things return to normal, children will be able to maybe make that with alfoil and cardboard and that sort of stuff, because all the instructions are there. So look, while that would have been nice to have in the book beginning there, it needed to begin in another place. So
on that point, talking about Andrew, and this is when I started wanting to write, so even when my sister was younger, I loved his books. Now, some of your illustrators, their first-time books, some of them have got, 2 or 3 books before they worked with you. But Andrew McLean, how did you feel when you were first paired with him for Bob?
Okay, so what happened with that? I was actually at Zart Art, and we hadn't found an illustrator for Bob the Railway Dog, and Andrew was giving a presentation at Zart Art that evening, and I looked at his landscapes. I can't remember which book he was talking about that he'd done, and I sat there. It was just this light globe moment of, my gosh, would he do Bob? So I rang Marianne Ballantyne and I said, Marianne, could we get Andrew to do it? And she said, yes, I'll ring him. So she rang him and he said yes. And I think, both those stories have been the sorts of stories that he has really enjoyed illustrating. And once again, they're in his heart. So he's understood the characters and he's loved the characters as well. But I felt for both these books, the landscapes were just so very important. I have got here, look, these are some of the illustrations.
Oh,
that's the other thing. So when Andrew was doing the book, I basically packed up all my research stuff, all my information, and having the second time around, the second book with him, I actually drove over to his house and gave him all my research information. We went through all the photographs, everything I had on the computer, and really from then on I left it with him because he knows what he's doing. There was no need for my involvement from then on at all. And here's some different characterization of Lenny, different expressions, different looks.
beautiful.
So just to, we got time to do just the talking from the landscape point of view. I mean, I don't know how clear that is, but
No, you get the idea. It's beautiful.
yeah, you've got this aloneness. So without the words, that illustration just explains to you, says to you,
You can actually smell the eucalyptus, like you can feel that air. It's beautiful.
And his courage, his aloneness, this 9-year-old out there by himself, completely happy about that because his only concern was Ginger Mick and his love of Ginger. They were best friends, and I think the other interesting thing is that they were actually born on the same day, both in Leongatha. So Lenny's maternal grandfather, Ginger Mick, was born on his farm. So, and he was born the same day as Lenny, and then 2 years later, Lenny's grandpa gifted Ginger Mick to Lenny on his second birthday. So,
and did he stay? Did he stay with Lenny for Ginger Mick's whole life?
Yeah, and he did, and he lived until he was 27, and he he's buried at Flows, which is just lovely. You know, 27 is a good age for a pony, and yeah, they spent their whole lives together. So
That is incredible.
mm,
So the secret project I can't ask you about.
no.
Um, I won't.
And I might slash Marissa line, so we don't want that.
No, we don't. No, that would not be good. So what are you reading at the moment?
What am I reading? So I have just finished Eleanor Oliphant. What's the rest of it? Is completely fine.
What did you
Highly,
think?
I loved it. You and I spoke a little bit about this earlier, Sue, and you said that you took a little while to get into it. I didn't, and I sort of now have a bit of a theory that if I can't get into a book pretty much in the first couple of chapters, I now put it away and don't worry. This, you know, it got hold of me, and the twist, the whole characterization I thought was just, yeah, fantastic. So
Oh,
highly, highly recommended.
yeah, that was
Mm.
fabulous. That really was fabulous. And at the moment, is there any picture book around that you've seen? And I know it's a bit hard because we're not getting out into bookshops and to libraries. Have you seen anything lately that you go, wow, that is incredible?
Gee, you didn't tell me that question, Sue.
Yeah,
I'm
no,
a
I
bit
just
nervous.
sneaked one in.
Look, there's none. I suppose the thing is, we both have friends who are out there that now. So if I said one, I'd be favouring one and not the other. So I'm not going to do that. Can I instead say that
Oh,
Margaret Wilde is my hero? I love everything she writes, and I grabbed this yesterday because it's just a really special book. The writing is stunning. The words are just brilliant. Illustrations by Donna Rawlins are also beautiful. But it's got a little special thing inside too. It's signed by Margaret Wilde, not by Donna. I must fix that. But I gave it to my son. My dearest Wade, with love, Mummy. The day you fell off the beam at gym and slit your eyelid open, and we ended up at hospital. So basically, that was my very first visit to Books Illustrated. And I bought that book for Wade, and I also bought a book for my daughter. And then I got a phone call to say that Wade had this accident at gym, and I had to go and go to hospital, and that's what we did. So very, very memorable. But I do have another book, picture book, coming out in November, and
and
that's
can you
published
talk about
by.
this? Can you talk about it?
We can talk.
Oh,
We
good.
can
Please
talk
do.
about this. I'm sorry, but how are we running out of time, Sue? Or
We've got a
right?
few minutes. I will let you go
Have
a
we?
bit longer.
Okay.
No favoritism here.
Okay. Okay. So it's called One Lone Swallow, and not a true story at all. Something totally out of my head, which really I sort of started writing 10 years ago. I went to the Bologna Book Fair, which is the only time I've ever been, and it was wonderful and fantastic. And I would recommend it for anyone to go, just to be there and just drink in the atmosphere and the love of books. And there are just so many, and it just makes you feel so humble that you're here and your book is here, and there are so many thousands of beautiful books. So anyway, look, I started writing this story called One Lone Swallow and put it away for a few years and all of that. Anyway, now it's been published by New Frontier. It's been a little bit delayed by Corona in that it'll be coming out in November. But it is set in Florence. And Sophia, the publisher, said to me the other day that she said it is just lovely to be working on a book that celebrates Italy because they've had such a difficult time through all of this. And, I really feel that that's important as well. And I'm working with Owen Swan on that, and his illustrations are just beautiful. And so it'll be my third book with him. So that's an exciting thing.
Oh, I can't wait to see that. And I think too, for me, this book shows your tenacity, and it shows how much as writers we've got to stick to those, never throw anything out, and stick to those books or those manuscripts you've written that are embedded in your heart, because it does happen. Might take 10 years, but it will happen.
Yeah, a few of them might have taken 10 years now. But look, that's right. And I think one of the things I've been doing through all of this, I've been not cleaning out, but discovering, finding stories that I've started in the backs of all my little notebooks. And, you know, things are typed, they're sort of around everywhere. And I was a bit horrified the other day because there are quite a few. And not all of them will make it, you know. Some of them are just practice stories. And I think that's what we all need to remember as well.
Corinne, I could talk for ages, and you know I do. Thank you so much for joining us for Portable Magic and talking about To the Bridge and your reading and your writing and your life. Thank you so much.
To the Bridge. Thanks, Sue, and thank you very, very much for having me on. It was fun.
My pleasure.
Bye. Bye.